Hello, and thank you so much to Roxanne for giving us such a great entrance and start to our conference today. So I'm going to facilitate a panel of three of our leading leaders today. I'm CEO of the Australian Library and Information Association. I'm Sue McKay. I've been in my job since 2012, and I have to say it's one of the best jobs in the world, but I'm sure that would be argued by my other three panellists. So I'm joined today by David Fricker. David is Director General of the National Archives of Australia, and like me, he joined the archives in 2012. The thing, I won't read his biography because lots of you know him, but the thing that I love to talk to David about are digital collections and digital continuity. And David and I were on a radio talk show at one point, and David used the best phrase I've heard, which was that digital collections are constantly on life support. So I'm just sharing that one with you. Our second panellist is Kim McKay. Kim is the Australian Museum's first female director, and she has led a massive transformation of the museum. So there's the new Crystal Hall accessible entrance, which has been there for 5 years, and Project Discover was officially launched in November last year. So I imagine Kim's doing a huge sigh of relief that this massive building project is now successfully completed. And then sharing a major building success with Kim is our other panellist, Kate Torney. And Kate is the CEO of the State Library of Victoria. She's been there since 2015. She joined us from ABC News, and she's been a terrific advocate for libraries in her 6 years in the sector. And Kate has just completed an $88 million redevelopment of the State Library of Victoria with a bit of help from her team, and won the ALIA Library Design Award for that project a couple of weeks ago. So congratulations to Kate on that one. So we've got these people in the room, and I'm going to fire some questions at them. So David, Kim and Kate, the first question I'm going to ask you is, besides the champagne, the canapes, the glorious life, what attracted you to the Glam sector and to this job? David, do you want to kick us off?
All right, thanks, Sue. I'm very happy to kick off. And can I also join with Roxanne's acknowledgement of country? I'm speaking to you from Ngambri, Ngunnawal land, and I pay my respects to elders past, present. Look, so I came into it from a very much IT, information management, and government administration background. I hadn't worked as an archivist or in the Glam sector prior to taking up the position here back in 2012. And my attraction to coming to the National Archives was in my sort of ambition for what we could do with information, with the records of government as a source of knowledge, of insights, and as documentary heritage for Australians. And 2012, a lot's happened. It's almost 10 years now. Lots happened, but that period has been defined by, really widespread technological change and revolutions, but also in some other mega trends around, getting people's trust in government, connecting people with information that they need about their own identity and who they are and how they fit into society. And so that was it. And briefly, Sue, for me, it was really bringing me into Glam was just that latent power of information and the way that can transform people's lives, especially information about them personally, about me, about my parents, about my community. So that was why, and I've enjoyed it since the day I joined. It's been quite a journey.
Thank you, David. Kim, that sense of national identity, of personal identity, is that something that attracted you as well?
Oh, absolutely. The Australian Museum is the nation's first museum. We were founded in 1827 and have the largest collection in the Southern Hemisphere of over 21.9 million objects and specimens. So we're both a natural history museum and a cultural museum. Telling the story of Australia and the Pacific really is our focus on the East Coast. We're located in Sydney, of course. I was very fortunate to have been invited to join the board of the Australian Museum. I'd spent nearly a decade in the United States working for National Geographic, and prior to that, the Discovery Channel, and had a big background in the environment, but also a lot of intersection with culture over the years and natural history. So I thought it was wonderful to join the board. And of course, that really revealed so much about this organisation to me that I hadn't known about before. The depth of the science that's conducted here. We've got over 100 scientists working day in, day out at the museum, and that depth of history that really reveals so much, not just about the past, but, you know, can help inform our future. So after 2 years on the board, the role became vacant, and I thought, boy, I'm up for a big challenge, and threw my hat in the ring. And I was very fortunate to be appointed to the role as a non-museum person, a non-museum background. It was the first time for me working in the public service. I'd always worked either in the not-for-profit sector or a private enterprise. So it was a big change for me, but one I've really enjoyed. And I've been here 7 years now. And you mentioned I'm the first woman. Well, that's the first woman in 193 years to run the organisation. And I'm very proud of that. And we've now got really great gender equity on the leadership of the museum. When I joined, there were no women on the leadership team. Now it's just over 50-50. So we're making some great strides here, and it's a really exciting time for this institution.
Thank you so much, Kim. And I'm going to loop back for my next question to that thing about coming into the Glam sector and to public service from outside that area. Kate, can I just come to you and ask you about what brought you into the Glam sector?
Yeah, so I have, as you mentioned, I have a career in journalism and has spent most of that at the ABC. And I think I have a, very strong public service ethos. And I think, great public service, great cultural institutions contribute so much to our national identity and to our democracy. And so I think for me, those are sort of values that have been really important and values that have driven me. And so I think when I was thinking about potentially making a move from journalism, I was really challenged because I really had a career which was a vocation. And I think, all of us have to recognise that not everyone has that. And we're so lucky when you do find a role that is vocational, that you love. And so when the library role came up for me, there were a couple of things. It was a resonance with storytelling and memory and history and why that's so important. But also, I think, looking at the transformation of the library sector, that I'd actually had no visibility of, and embarrassingly had no visibility of. So when I first saw the job was advertised, I then went and did a bit of digging, and I just thought the story of libraries was absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that libraries are thriving in a digital age, I just felt that I wanted to be part of that. And then more broadly, the Glam sector itself, and that sense of really constantly reimagining and understanding what audience needs are. So for me, there was the string and the line and the alignment with storytelling and history and memory. And I think Kim and David have so beautifully articulated that. And it was also that sense of constantly transforming to remain relevant, much loved and accountable as well.
I think the thing that I love about all three of you is that you're so excited about your jobs and about the potential of the sector. I'm going to come to Kim next, because I'm going to pick up on that thing you said about you came from a commercial world, you came from media, you came from all sorts of different spaces, and you've travelled over from the US and back again. And I'm just interested to know how you found your leadership style. Have you had to change it for the environment that you're now in?
I don't think so. I think I like to think that I'm authentically me, and that everyone who knows me has said to me over the years, my God, you haven't changed a bit. I've always been this way. And I think it's just great, though, that I feel very fortunate and very honoured to have the opportunity to lead this institution at this particular time in its history. So I think for leadership anyway to work, it has to be authentic. And it's about who you are and the way in which you communicate. I think, every leader says, communicate, and then communicate more. Well, in fact, you have to times that by 6 in these days. It's all about how you engage with your team. And I think I was like this before I came into the Glam sector. And certainly I've got a very determined approach. You know, I'm ambitious for the organisation and for all the people who work here. And it was the opportunity to change things that really appealed to me about coming to join the museum, and that I felt I could help drive that change and support the team to achieve these new things here too. And, you know, Kate mentioned the great challenge of these institutions. You know, one of them is to be relevant for the future, and we all need to adapt and change for that relevancy. And I think as a leader of an institution like this, you've got to be on the edge of that all the time. You've got to be thinking about how your organisation is fulfilling its mandate and really engaging well with the public and really revealing those stories and exciting people. So if anything, I think the commitment and excitement maybe we all share for our roles is there because we need it to succeed as well for ourselves. And I mean, Sue, you said you think you have the best job. No, I definitely do have the best job.
And I can see Kate's got a hand up as well. Kim, I think you raise an interesting thing there, which I'm going to come to David. I'm going to land you with a difficult question, David. What you've described is that actually you were recruited as a leader to come because the Australian Museum needed you and your set of skills. But do we expect people who haven't reached that leadership people to conform to the organisation? And then do we bring leaders in because of their particular bent? I don't know if I'm expressing that very well, but David, could you pick this up and run with it?
I'll do my best to. Look, I can say in the case of the National Archives, I know that I was brought in because of the moment that the National Archives was in as an institution. So, you know, we're a government archive, so we're in the business of setting record-keeping standards for government. So we need to apply some sort of rigour to make sure that essentially the documentary heritage for the future will be there when the future wants it. And it was very much around this digital transformation that that the Council of the Archives at the time was very interested in. But I do think it was also that passion for wanting to get something done. You know, it wasn't coming in as a technocrat who was going to go through the spreadsheets and, you know, make the numbers right and, you know, purchase the right IT and all that sort of stuff. It really was, I think, a combination of you know, that background in terms of information management and transformation, but also that passion for caring about the future of the institution and what it stands for. And I think, you know, to your point, Kim, you know, what you were saying about that authenticity, I mean, actually genuinely caring about what it is we're trying to do. And you know, we've also been talking about that meaning and significance, and to have that, you know, that leadership, I think, passion for, look, this is a significant institution. This has meaning, this has consequences, you know, for Australia. It has consequences for how the rest of the world sees Australia. And I think that, you know, just knowing what really matters to you and what you care about and having that much sort of pride and ambition for the institution, I think is a fundamental part of why I was brought in anyway, and certainly what I've attempted to carry through in the years that I've been here.
Thank you, David. I think what I've seen as well, and I won't name names here, but on the panel, is that perhaps because you're such strong people and you've got such a strong sense of who you are, where you've come from, how you lead. I know it's hard when you're employed by a state government or a national federal government. It's hard to push back because you're the employee, but sometimes you need to push back. And maybe that's also affected your leadership style, perhaps a little. David, do you want to comment on that at all?
Oh yeah, well certainly, as you know, as a Commonwealth public servant, you know, we all have our code of conduct and we have our APS values and we serve the government of the day. And so you want to have that pride and ambition for the institution. You know, we're here to make change. None of us have got the job to keep everything the same. We're all here to change stuff. But it's true, Sue, is that within a government infrastructure, you can't go rogue. You know, it's no good going off on a wild frolic and trying to set yourself up as an opponent of the government of the day. A part of the art of leadership, I think, in a government institution is to work with government, work with the politics. Don't become politicised, but work with the politics of the day to get the outcomes that you need to have. So we've got to keep pushing advice and pushing hard to government about more resources and better legislation and all these sorts of things, but do it in a way that facilitates positive change. Don't do it in a way that alienates you from government and just ends up making you a big problem that people would rather be rid of. And so you're right, Sue, to point that out. It is a bit of a, even though we are a cultural institution and we perform that role, we're an executive agency within the Commonwealth Government, and we have to work within those frameworks and within those influence structures to get the work done. And it can be hard sometimes. I mean, sometimes you've got to put up with a bit of public criticism because a lot of the work you do, the advocacy you do, is behind the scenes, and that isn't always publicly visible.
Thank you, David, because I don't want this to be a leadership panel where we all sit around and you three say, yes, it's all great and not a problem, really. I want to dig into things a bit. So, Kate, in that context of how's your leadership style changing, obviously you've gone through also a major kind of people change at the State Library of Victoria. Have you handled it differently than the way you would have handled a kind of cultural people change at the ABC?
Absolutely. And to Kim's point, I think I haven't changed. My authenticity hasn't changed. But I'll give you an example. When actually on the day that I announced that I was leaving the ABC, I had a staff meeting at Ultimo, and there were probably a couple of hundred people there. And in true beautiful ABC form, it was like a press conference, really. And then everyone from the cadet through to Kerry O'Brien asked me why I was leaving, and was this some sort of a sense of a lack of confidence in the ABC. Everything at the ABC, has to have an angle and a story. And I left Ultimo and I flew down to Melbourne, and I came to speak to the library team. And I, spoke and I talked about what I was hoping to achieve. And then, as I would do in journalism, I stopped and I said, so I'll throw the floor open to questions. And I was just met with nothing. And I said at the time, you've got to help me here. I've come from journalism. You've got to. But I think in journalism, it was a very different culture. It was a culture where you never died wondering how someone was feeling about a change that you were implementing, because everyone would tell you. And so in a way, I found that much easier, because you knew how to manage and work and discuss and communicate, as Kim and David have both said. It took me a little while to understand that in the library sector, that's very different. And so I think I have really changed the tools that I use, not the leader that I am, but understanding that there are different needs in this sector, and it attracts people with different characteristics. So yes, I think I'm the same leader, but I've certainly led that change differently, and led that change to also attempt to get more, a sort of more proactive and accountability into the change management system as well. So I think it's been very different for me.
Thank you, Kate. Kim, you spoke at the start of this. Have you got anything you want to bring in at the end of this section?
I think what Kate just mentioned about the response, I think I had a similar sort of experience in a way, met with a lot of skepticism. So I really saw that I had to be very much in tune with, how the team here felt about the institution, what they wanted to see. So I immediately, 7 years ago, started having directors' roundtables so I could meet everybody in small groups from different parts of the museum and get to hear from them directly about their ideas for the future, and try and make them understand that I was here to help rather than here to hinder, and to demonstrate that the change was going to be a positive thing, because museums don't like to change very much just by nature. They're very conservative organisations, like libraries, I suppose. And I think demonstrating that the change would be a good one for us and good for the public as well. That often our institutions are very inward focused organisations, where in fact I was trying to push it out more. How can we be more outward facing as an organisation and serving the people of our city and internationally when we had visitors from overseas in the old days? So, you know, it was about gaining that trust, I think, and it wasn't just trust from the staff and having to lead in that way. It's also, you know, from the board having their confidence, but also the government as well. And I approached it that I need to prove myself. You know, let's do this thing and say it was successful and a tick around it, and then let's do another thing and show it can be successful, and growing on there and gradually building a reputation across all of the key stakeholders that the museum was in solid, good hands. And I wasn't going to do anything radical to destroy that with coming in from the outside. You know, I think we're all in our roles to lead, yes, but because we also have an understanding of that the situation has changed dramatically out there because of the digital world in which we now live. And there are new ways to communicate and engage with people and keep records and report on things. And, you know, there's a whole new world, and it's one that the glam sector has to respond to. And so that's where you see people being brought in from the outside, really. So it's a matter of demonstrating that you can achieve, you can work with them, you can listen to them, and then gaining that trust so that you can continue.
And Kim, that's great, because I think the job spec is go out, do amazing things as a leader, but please don't break it. Talking about change, Kim, and introducing that, of course, the biggest challenge for a leader is change, and part of that is change when it's forced upon you. And last year, of course, was just massive for having to change, adapt, do things differently. What were the particular, to use Kate's terms, the particular tools you pulled out of your leadership case, your toolkit, to actually do that? David, I'll throw to you as first up on this one.
Well, particularly with the challenges of COVID, you know, last year, it was coming back to those. Okay, you know, we're all facing this crisis together. It's going to be enormously disruptive. There's a high level of uncertainty. There's a lot of misinformation floating around. So, you know, how do we move through this as an organisation? And it's, again, repeating the theme, it's returning to the things that we care about the most. And so it was just saying, well, what are we going to do to care for our people, our staff? And so that then became, you know, organising ourselves until this week, you know, you'll be working at home, we'll be in the office, or then we swap, etc. Or in the case of, you know, Victoria, and depending on where we were, because we have offices around Australia, of course, so every state territory jurisdiction had its own requirements. So it was about caring for staff. And then it was about, for us, caring about the records. So, you know, we want to make sure that we don't drop the ball on that core function we have, which is the preservation and care for the records in our custody. And then the last bit was about services, you know, so what services do we provide to the community that we value the most and the community values the most? And let's all talk about how we're going to sustain a level of service delivery. And I think just having those three very sort of clearly articulated themes, so we could continuously focus on, you know, these are the three things we're doing, and just keep everybody together on that, was very effective. I think I'm very pleased with the team here at the Archives. I think we managed it very well, and our feedback in our surveys have indicated that staff are very satisfied with that. And it made it easier to do the things we all did that we're doing now, you know, to suddenly learn all about, you know, working from home and, you know, video conferencing and collaboration, and all of those, that incredible technology uptake that we all had to go through. All of that was made much easier by just constantly returning to those three things. That's what we're valuing, you know, our people, our records, and the services to the public. And I'll just quickly say, and also just to, it was an opportunity to reconfirm with all the people at the Archives that our services are regarded as essential services by the government. You know, it's don't go thinking that if you're not doing JobKeeper or whatever, you're not important. You know, our services were regarded as essential, and it was an obligation on us all to work through this and sustain those services. None of us were getting off the hook here. You know, we had to maintain a level of service. And so I think it's great, you know, we were able to rally around those three things. And across Australia, everybody worked together and supported one another. So, you know, we've definitely come out of it a stronger organisation.
Did you find it tightened the bond with your executive team? Was that one of the things that happened?
Well, we certainly got to see each other a lot more often. I suppose we felt, I think all of us felt like you were meeting every 5 minutes about something. And yeah, look, it does, because again, when you distill, you know, the leadership challenge down to a few core themes in an environment where things are changing very quickly, you know, from one day to the next, and you're managing that sort of matrix of issues across all the jurisdictions of Australia, yeah, I think it does. It brings that team together, and I think it brought the teams across the archives together.
Thanks, David. Kim, can I sort of extend that a little bit to you? Obviously, I want to hear about how you led through that change, that crisis period, but also, did it change the frequency and the manner of your communications with your team?
Yes, very much so. So we adopted an approach, you know, from day one, that we wanted to find out how people were going to cope at home. We sent everybody home, and within a week, we had everyone equipped with all the technology they needed to work from home effectively. So that was the first thing that we did as a leadership team here, is get organised, make sure we were responding very quickly and well to the need of the staff who were sent home, that they actually could therefore communicate within their own groups effectively. From my own perspective, I decided to come into the office most days, and that's because we were building. So the Australian Museum had closed for 15 months for our major transformation building project. So I didn't have to deal with the public not coming here. We'd already told them that we were closed, but it was the staff sending them home. But I decided to come in every day and work from here, sort of like pulling my desk, my battle station, if you like. I wanted the builders to know that I was here on site and could be accessed to solve any problems along the way. And I wanted the staff to know that I was here and looking after things as well. So I actually wrote to them all every day, and I think I now have a book out of it over the whole period of COVID, because I wrote, I tried to let my inner comedian come out a little bit as well. You know, maybe I've got a career in stand-up in the future, I don't know, but I tried to write to them in a very honest and open way and show my vulnerabilities. And I think leadership is very much about being vulnerable and having that in common. Like the fears and concerns of my team were also my fears and concerns too. You know, that was shared among us all. But I needed to show us a way out of that. So I did decide to write this blog, if you like, to them every single day during COVID. And it really did change things. The positive reaction that I got back from that was extraordinary. The notes from staff, the phone calls. It enabled also more of freedom of discussion and a bit of fun thrown into the mix as well at the same time. So that was pretty important. And then, of course, just working out, as David was saying, how we were engaging with the public as well. They couldn't come in here. We had various plans already in place for while we were closed, but this changed everything. And we very quickly created, you know, an online site called OAM Inside Out, which was a teaching tool for parents to use, really, as all the kids were at home. And we heard from everybody they were struggling. Parents were struggling with working and teaching their children. And this was a great resource the museum could provide, with all of these great children's activities and teaching resources at your fingertips. And so the team certainly responded very quickly and well to that. And that site has won all sorts of great awards since. But, you know, it was a matter of, I think, holding firm and being a constant presence there for the team. They knew that I was here, that I could respond to their needs, and that our leadership team, as David said, we met a lot. We met every day for the first 3 months of COVID to share all of the issues together and to solve problems. And that was really, really important. And I think it's bonded us, actually. Nothing like a good crisis to go through adversity together to bond your team. And we went through it and we finished our building on time and on budget. But also we've built something through COVID that I think really delivers a really beautiful new civic space back to the community, so that the standard of what we created was really good too. And those things don't happen by accident. That took a lot of people working very hard to deliver all of that. But it was terrific. And just coping with all of the fun things that happened, Kate, I'm sure you had these things with your building. I mean, my new lifts and escalators were coming from Wuhan in China, of all cities in the world to come from, right? And so that factory went into lockdown, and we were on a deadline, and so to work around that, and our beautiful terrazzo that we were putting right through the museum was coming from Italy, and they went into major lockdown and that factory closed. So we were able to adjust and go to a local supplier. So in the end, it turned out really, really well by just looking at each problem as it arose and finding a solution to it. And never once did I feel uncomfortable about the situation we were in. I always felt that, we can deal with this. Any problem that does emerge, we will deal with, and we will continue to deliver to the museum community and communicate with them. And I think that decision to, write to the staff every day was a good one, and I like writing, so it was fun.
Thank you, Kim. I think one of the issues might be for you as leaders that people kind of assume you've got the answers, because you're the leader. You must know everything, what's going on, whether we should quarantine staff, But of course, all of you and we here at ALIA were going, I've got no idea. We'd better do some research on this. So I'm going to turn to Kate and ask this question about managing through the crisis. And because we're both working in the library space, I know that we had a bit of conflict about some of our members, for example, were really keen that we should open libraries and be there for people because we're an essential service. And other people were saying, protect the staff, don't open because we're one-on-one with people right up together, helping them use computers. So what was your experience through this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because of course, libraries are often the safe haven in a crisis. And so I remember the day that we closed the library for the first time, and we had many staff in tears. It felt to them, absolutely contrary to the vocation that the library would close. But I think, Sue, being in Victoria, the decision making was pretty clear for us, and I think also shifting that sort of sense of that's the wrong thing to do with, well, that's happening, so what do we do to then start to deliver those services and to ensure that we are continuing to support the community. So let's not debate whether or not that should or shouldn't have happened. It's happened. So now let's focus on what we can continue to do to deliver that support. And I think not only at the State Library, but I think, I just could not have been prouder of, the Victorian public library system that just in a bespoke way, it was just that reminder that library leaders know their communities and they get on with it. Not a lot of talking, not a lot of, kind of just pleading for funding. It's just understanding a problem and responding to that problem as best they can. And I think the diversity of how that panned out, whether or not it was the calls that were made to elderly people in communities, whether or not it was the food packs, whether or not it was bibliotherapy sessions, it just manifested itself in such an extraordinary display of professionalism, vocation and support. So I think that tension very quickly dissipated because we focused on the solution as opposed to whether or not the place should be open or shut. But I think interestingly, as we reopened, the joy that people had coming back on site, and for staff seeing regulars and being able to return to deliver those services that are critical to the community. I think that's been really inspiring and humbling.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to throw a question in here because I think a lot of the people on this at this conference will be perhaps at that manager level looking to step up to leadership. And they may be wondering, what's the difference? And David started this by saying they didn't hire a technocrat. They didn't want a technocrat here. What they wanted was a leader. And I want you to have a think about the point in your career when you stepped from being a manager to being a leader. And that may not have been about the job title. It might have been about a situation you faced. And David, I'm going to come to you first. What's your advice for managers here? What's the difference?
Look, I think as I said a bit earlier on, I think the difference is that you don't come to work to keep everything the same. You come to work because there's a change that you want to make. And so, and I do despair, across the public service, this is my biggest criticism of my own service, the APS. There are far too many people who are trying to stay out of trouble and not enough people who are trying to get into a bit of trouble. And I think, as a leader, you've got to be ready for that. You need an appetite to mix it up a bit. Let's create a bit of trouble, as I say. And it's so for me that pivot point is about there's a result. There's a result that you want to achieve, and you've really you own that, and that's something that you want to get to, and it's about being that results oriented, goal oriented, and just accepting that your job is to make sure things are not staying the same, that they are changing towards that. And it's standing for something, it's really believing in that. And it's being ready to talk about it whenever you meet people. If they, we talk about that cliche of the lift speech or the elevator speech, but I actually believe in that, when you have conversations with people, you're ready to talk about those few things you're trying to get done that are important to you. And I think Kate and Kim, you're both talking about significance and meaningfulness. It's the goals that we have. You've got to understand why that is significant to other people. Why is that important? And I think if you really believe that and you can really articulate it, that's, for me, more than anything else, that's what the leadership position is about. It's knowing that there's a result you want to achieve, and it's setting a course to get there, and it's not being satisfied until you've been able to achieve that outcome. And with that comes all techniques of leadership about achieving consensus, and good leadership needs good followship. And so you need to be able to, recruit followers to your cause. But that's for me, especially working in Canberra, in the public service, it's the thing that holds the public service back more than anything else is that risk aversity. And there are still, in the public service, we can still reward people for staying out of trouble. And I hate that. I really think that we all need to be out there boldly pursuing new vistas.
Thank you, David. How long would you say you've been a leader for?
I hope you're asking somebody else that question.
Well, I'm going to say that you probably were a leader before 2012, before you joined the archives. But anyway, we'll move on.
Yes. I think the fire was lit earlier than that. That's true, Sue.
Yeah. Kate, you were nodding enthusiastically, and both you and Kim gave the thumbs up to David. What's your take on that?
Oh, look, I think it's I just could not agree more. And I think I think the difference between leadership and management, I just really admire the leader without a title that has a vision and brings people with them. And David, I'm with you. I have worked with too many managers who begin with, the leadership team needs us to do this, so come on, we better get on with it. I just do not take the paycheck if that is your approach to life. So I remember when I realised that actually I had leadership potential. I was a junior producer during the first Bali bombings overnight. And, we were a green team. We really shouldn't have been in charge of putting anything to air. And that crisis hit. And it wasn't until 10 hours later when I looked around and I thought, oh my God, just led 12 hours of coverage, and I knew what to do, and it's been amazing, and we've done it together. And I had no title and no responsibility and no kind of line responsibility there. But I realized that actually I was not the smartest person in the room, but I knew how to get the great people to do good things together. And yeah, I think that's good leadership.
That is beautiful. Thank you, guys. Now, Kim, how can you better that one?
Well, I don't think I can, because what Kate was describing, and David too, as part of their own leadership stories, is as a leader, you've got to possess some vision. That's what people follow. So if you can establish the vision, and in Kate's case, that lovely story you told about the Bali bombings, you knew where you were going that day, whether you knew it through experience, which obviously you had, but instinctively you knew what you had to produce and get on air by what time. And that's vision, of knowing where you're going. And so I think all leaders need to have vision, and that's what people will follow. If you can explain it, they'll buy into it. I was thinking when you said, when did I first become a leader? I was a bossy kid, so I probably in the playground maybe, and at school, but I had a part-time job, of course, like most young Australians do. I worked at Woolworths in Manly in Sydney on Thursday nights and Saturday mornings, and I joined at 15, and after 6 months I was made the senior casual supervisor, which meant I was given the key to the cash drawer. And I felt, oh, I'm in charge here. And actually it was a small store. The manager used to disappear upstairs on a Thursday night, never see him, and I thought, I quite like this. I quite like being in charge. So I think it came out early in me, I hate to say, and it was there through my 20s. So in fact, I started leading teams in my 20s on different projects and so forth. And then by my 30s was really running an organisation and on from there. So I think I've always enjoyed the challenge of leadership. I think it's, I enjoy the difficulties of it. You're not always popular with people either, by the way. I mean, there are many times I'm sure I felt that there might be a voodoo doll with a few pins sticking in it at different times. But you've got to take the good with the bad, and you've got to make some hard decisions sometimes as a leader. And that's the other thing where you demonstrate your leadership. It's with the good, but it's when the really tough decisions have to be made. And with change in an organisation, there are some very difficult days and difficult decisions, and you've got to keep going through those. And that, that's where you really have to dig deep and hopefully go home and have a stiff drink or two, to get through it and come back the next day with the smile on your face and saying, this is where we're going, picking it up. Your staff are relying on you not to. And I believe in authenticity, and showing your vulnerabilities is really important, but also because people need to know you're human and that you're going through the same thing as they are. But you've got to have strength of purpose and courage, I suppose, to keep going even when the chips are down. And that is the true test of leadership. So COVID, I think, has stretched everybody, every leader, and it has made many leaders emerge as well, among the staff who didn't maybe see themselves in that role, but they've stepped up, and that's very exciting.
Kim, thank you. I could just go on for another hour with you guys. This is brilliant. But unfortunately, we've only got a minute left. So I want to kind of wrap this up now by saying thank you so much, David, Kate, Kim. That has been terrific. This session is recorded so that we can share it and watch it again, which would be terrific. But we have had 2 questions through that I would love to send to you by email. And if you wouldn't mind dropping me the answers back, I'll then be able to share those with the people who kindly put them in the chat. So thank you, Kim McKay, David Fricker, Kate Torney. We are going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in 2 minutes with the lightning talk session. So thank you all for staying with us, and look forward to catching up later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.